Recently, I got to visit what have been voted as the best theme park in the world for the first time. This is MACK Rides testing grounds and where they often build the prototypes of new roller coaster models. Part of that group is Euro Mir, the world's first and most unique MACK Ride spinning coaster, located in Rust, Germany's Europa-Park. Since its opening in 1997, Euro Mir has taken several 16-rider trains through one of the weirdest spinning coaster experiences on the planet. As always, I will go through 7 different categories in my review, where I will give the ride a score out of 10, the scores of which will then go to a final average score. But before judging my first mock spinner, let's take a look at the statistics. Euro Mir stands at a decent 92 feet, a height which gives a surprisingly good view. That height is then complemented by a length of 3,215.3 feet, as well as a top speed of 49.7 miles an hour, giving this coaster a normal speed to height ratio. The first category to talk about is appearance, which is all about how the ride is presented to the eye. Euro Mir has a dark blue color scheme, which is also slightly faded. However, it fits nicely in with the theme. In the middle of the ride are also a couple of skyscraper-like towers, which are covered in mirrors. These things combined make the ride look really cool and help Euro Mir stand out to become more memorable. With help from the towers, the coaster also looks taller, and it helps presenting it as a thrill coaster rather than a family-friendly ride. They're also the biggest part of the beauty, which the coaster itself doesn't help with a lot apart from the trains, which are in different shiny and nice looking colors. There isn't a whole lot I can say about the ride's appearance, but from what I think it's fair, I will give it a 5 out of 10. A mix between an old and worn looking coaster and the shiny bonuses. For the roller coaster enthusiast, an intense ride is often a good ride, and the same goes for many in the general public. Luckily for Euro Mir, this ride was a lot more intense than I thought it would be, and I would actually say that Europa-Park has 4 thrill coasters instead of 3 because of Euro Mir. The first element you encounter after the lift hill are a bunch of switchbacks, where you go through a controlled and constant spin. These switchbacks actually felt faster than they look, and they do give a little bit of laterals in the corners, but it's nothing compared to a Gerstlauer bobsled or a MACK Rides Wildemaus. Then you hit the first drop, and this is where the control spin stops, and you either face forwards or backwards depending on your seat. The drop itself is nothing special at all, but the bottom of the drop gives powerful G's that really push your face downwards, which I did not expect. It reminded me of the bottom of an Intamin gyro swing's largest swing, and it was one of my favorite parts of the ride. Next up is a slow hill with no airtime, where the cars do a 180-degree turn, so those who face forwards doing the drop now face backwards, and the same the other way. From here on out, you go through a bunch of turns and transitions, plus an extra mid-course brake run. Many of these turns have decent force to them, and that especially goes for the final turn and the helix right before it, both of which are almost as forceful as the first drop. Some of the transitions also do give some whip, but not all of them. In general, you get good positive forces as well as some laterals here and there. It does have its fair share of dead spots, and it doesn't have any airtime either, but from what it does have, I will give a score of 6 out of 10, with most of the points going to the forceful drop, helix and turns. Euro Mir's real downside shows in the next category, the smoothness category. I expected this ride to be rough when I went into it, but unfortunately it turned out to be more rough than anticipated. Pretty much any part of the ride with a decent speed shakes you from side to side, and some of the transitions give really hard jolts that you might not be prepared for, especially since there's a chance that you'll be facing backwards when you hit them, making it hard to brace for them, unless you know the layout in your head. It's definitely not the roughest coaster I've been on, but it did take away from the ride from me, and I will give Euro Mir a score of 4, since it could be worse, but it certainly is still an unfortunate thing. Then we have the ride time category, which is based on how long Euro Mir's ride experience feels. Let me just start out by talking about the lift hill. I wouldn't usually count a lift hill as part of the ride, but because Euro Mir has theming doing it, and it's so long that 3 trains are on it at the same time, I kinda felt like it was. It's like a dark ride really, and it literally lasts several minutes, since it's a tall and slow spiral lift hill with a kind of show. When it comes to the rest of the ride, you also go through a lot of time before you hit the final brake run, and the ride really feels long, so therefore Euro Mir gets a 10 out of 10. It's a long ride with a lot of different things throughout the experience. Theming is also something Euro Mir isn't shy of using. The coaster is themed to the Russian space station Mir, which makes sense as it is in the Russian section of the park as the area's main attraction. At the entrance you see a model of the space station itself, which helps with setting the mood, and in the inside of the queue line features space paintings on the walls. Most of the proper theming occurs during the lift hill, where you see cosmonauts and rockets. However, all that is pretty much it regarding the theming. Euro Mir doesn't have a lot of theming, and it's also not super intense, but the theming that is there is pretty cool, which also includes the music, which is space themed and has a space-like voice speaking. I feel like a score of 6 is right for Euro Mir in regards to theming. It's kind of in the middle when it comes to quantity and quality, and I also personally think that the theming is pretty cool. Many rides are often more interesting if they are unique. That is what the originality category is here to judge: innovation. Euro Mir was both mine and MACK Rides' first MACK spinning coaster, and it's also very different than the other MACK spinners out there. I would honestly say that it's one of the most unique coasters I have ridden, and I really can't think of anything that was like it when it was made. So I will give the weird spinning coaster a 10 out of 10 for originality. It absolutely deserves it. Final category is overall fun, and this definitely goes back to the roughness for me. I wouldn't say it was a bad ride at all. I'll definitely say that yes, I did have fun at this ride, even though the roughness definitely made it a little less fun than I was hoping for. It's very fun, but it's not just the layout that makes it. It's also the theming, and of course, as people know, the theme song. The Euro Mir soundtrack is one of the catchiest songs I have ever heard a coaster have. It's a techno song and that is fun to dance to when going up the lift hill, and if you're with friends, this ride is definitely more fun than without. The ride itself is also generally fun with its forces, and facing backwards is also pretty fun as well. I only rode this coaster once, and it was with me facing backwards doing the first drop. I would have liked to give Euro Mir an extra chance where I would try to face the other way if I could, but it didn't happen because of time, and I would rather re-ride some of the other coasters at the time. But from what I did experience, I would say that Euro Mir is an overall fun ride experience, and I think it deserves a score of 6 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's not bad either. After judging the coaster in 7 different categories, we can now add those 7 scores to a final average score, which comes out to 6.7. For me personally, this is an alright score. I know some people like it way more than I do. In fact, some would even say it's a top 3 ride at the park. That's not the case for me, but I do generally like this coaster. Do keep in mind that my review isn't an absolute of how good the coaster is, as my reviews also hold some subjective opinions. There's definitely a chance that you will either like this coaster more or less than me, and that is why I absolutely recommend you give it a ride to figure out where you stand. A last thing I would like to mention, since this ride throws you around a fair bit, is that the station has no bins, meaning that whatever you're bringing in the queue line, you bring with you on the ride. I personally had to ride with my water bottle between my legs, which I wasn't the biggest fan of, but it is what it is, and it luckily didn't affect my ride in any way. Well, that's it for my review of one of the weirdest coasters I have done, Euro Mir at Europa-Park. Of course, if you've been on it, I would love to hear your opinion of it in the comments below. I would also greatly appreciate your support for future content by liking the video if you enjoyed it, as well as subscribing if you want to keep up with what I post in the future. Otherwise, it has been Northern Rides, and I hope you all keep on riding.